This morning, I'm getting prepared to cook my annual Christmas brisket. So I thought I would talk about the lessons I've learned in said process. So my first few go-arounds of doing an all-night smoke of a brisket didn't go very well. I wouldn't consider that edible. It was pretty bad. On my third year of messing around, I started getting a little bit better at it, but I was teaching a class at the time, and one of the students in the class told me the secret to having a great brisket is to just leave it alone. And I said, well, what about this? What about that? And he's like, don't touch it. Put it in the oven. Put it in the smoker. Get the make sure that the temperature's right, and just leave it alone. Stop tinkering with it. And so I tried that. Put it in the smoker, set it the way I needed to, and I just left it alone. I came back 12 hours later and pulled the brisket out, and it was the best brisket I'd ever made. And since that time, I've the preparation process to make sure that the smoker stays the consistent temperature, and then doing a little bit of prep on the brisket, and then just leaving it alone for 12 hours has been my secret to smoking a great brisket. So this morning, I'm starting to go through the ritual. I'm cleaning the smoker. I'm picking out my 2 chunks of wood because I've learned I should not do too many chunks of wood, only a couple. And I've went and bought the brisket from a butcher nearby. And so I'm ready to go, locked and loaded. So now I've learned that all these fancy rubs, forget it. I just use salt and pepper. Salt, pepper, and 2 blocks of smoke wood, and I'm done. And by the way, this is not a fancy smoker either. I've gotten rid of all the fancy smokers, and I just have a Weber Bullet. It's basically a charcoal stand-up smoker. It costs less than $100. It was about, I'm telling you, it cooks the best brisket. Anyway, that's my Christmas brisket. But this idea of just leaving it alone has profound implications. I mean, when I first started my own company, I couldn't help myself. I kept tinkering and messing around and trying new things. And I thought I was doing the work, but what I was doing was confusing everybody, and including myself. So instead of confusing everybody and quit tinkering, I should have just kept the course and would have been far more successful. In my personal life, this has happened as well. You know, I can't leave well enough alone. I just got to keep pushing, keep trying different things. And although that's good, it certainly led to an exciting life, but not necessarily a stable life. So I think both extremes are bad, but I think there's a lot to be learned that sometimes the wisest choice on a life path is the choice where you decide to just do nothing, just stay the course. Now, that may not always be the attractive solution, but sometimes it may just be the best solution. You know, in high school, I read a book. I was forced to read this book on Taoism. I think it was called The Tao of Pooh or something like that. And this was based loosely on the Taoist principles. I think the Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu, I think was his name. He was the one that was basically the founder of Taoism. And he had this great quote. And years later, I went back and read this book, and I was like, man, I was just such an ignorant fool. I should have listened. Some good stuff. Anyway, the quote was, nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished. And, you know, if you think about it, you know, nature doesn't sweat and toil and make all these little changes. It just continues to push ever so slightly every day. And somehow, over time, nature just happens to make it work. So perhaps we should be a little bit more patient and less impatient. It's probably impatience that causes us to tinker, rather than the patient soul who continues the course. And, you know, I don't know if you've been like me, but I've worked for people, and I've been this person, but I've also worked for people that just can't help themselves. They're constantly messing around with the company. And things are going great, but we can't handle it. We just got to tinker, tinker, tinker. So as I prepare for my Christmas brisket this morning, I'm also thinking about how, I can reflect on what's going good in my life. And maybe I should just stay the course. No need to mess around with it. If it's going great, keep it going, right? So with that, I will say Merry Christmas and goodbye for today.